The Senate is always a very contentious topic, with the current balance of the Senate being at 51-49 in favor of the Democrats. Every single seat will be important. And one of these seats that generally is seen as a very vulnerable one is Joe Manchin, currently serving in West Virginia. In this video, I'm going to put into some context why Joe Manchin still serving is somewhat surprising. Um, we'll take a look at the state of the current West Virginia Senate race, both the GOP primary and potential head to head matchups with Joe Manchin. And ultimately, we will try to predict what will happen in 2024. Now, I will make one thing very clear at the start of this video. If Joe Manchin decides, for whatever reason, to not seek re election, it's game over for the Democrats. Joe Manchin is not very popular among other Democrats, seen as one of the most conservative members, especially within the Senate. However, in a very conservative state like West Virginia, that kind of Democrat is needed to even have a chance in the election. For example, in 2020, on the presidential level, West Virginia finished second, only behind Wyoming, with the biggest margin of victory for President Trump at 38%. This should speak volumes to how obviously conservative West Virginia is, and how it has been for plenty of election cycles. In 2018, Mitch McConnell very famously gave Joe Manchin a bunch of grapes because he said that they were just going to crush him like a grape. Obviously, that did not happen in 2018. However, there is a very clear opportunity for a pickup for the Republican Party in 2024. And why I think that this may finally be the time that Joe Manchin is unseated is because of who is running in the Republican primary. Jim Justice is the current governor, very popular within West Virginia, and he has announced that he will be seeking the Senate seat. Ultimately, he figures that he could step up from governor to senator, which obviously has no term limits. And he's not alone either. Mooney is Alex Mooney is a congressman from West Virginia, one of their districts in the U.S. House, and he is also running. So this creates a contested primary, obviously, but currently the state of the polls show that it is a largely uncontested primary. In the latest poll, Jim Justice was beating Mooney by over 40 points. So even if Jim Justice starts to slip in the polls somewhat, it's pretty hard to lose that large of a spread. A 40-point spread is a huge, commanding lead. So realistically, the matchup will be Jim Justice against Joe Manchin. Unless, once again, Joe Manchin decides to run and decides not to run. And if that's the case, the Democrats have absolutely no chance. Joe Manchin, I believe, has a very narrow path to victory currently. If we take a look at some of the latest polls, some of the older polls had Joe Manchin winning pretty handily against Mooney, 21 points, and then winning by 4 points against Jim Justice. But those were taken in August of last year, so they're completely moot. In May of this year, however, there were new polls done by East Carolina University. In the scenario that Alex Mooney is the nominee, it has him winning by 1 point within the margin of error, obviously, of 3.7. And this would also show at 41-40 that not everyone is decided. But the fact that Joe Manchin is behind to the less popular candidate, the significantly less popular candidate, should be worrying for Democrats. Now, if we take a look at the other side of this, in the Manchin versus Jim Justice case, you don't have to worry about the margin of error at all. Stays at 3.7. However, Jim Justice is ahead by 22 points. And so, what this adds up to is a very, very narrow path for the Democrats to retain this seat. It requires Joe Manchin to run again, which I think there is a pretty decent shot that he does. It would require that either Jim Justice is really going to start tanking in the polls, which I can't imagine he will, not to the extent that Democrats will need him to. Ultimately, I think Democrats would benefit from Alex Mooney just because he is less unanimously popular. And if he could find a way to pull it out, that would significantly increase Joe Manchin's chances. However, as I stated, he's currently behind to Alex Mooney. So even then, it still could be an uphill battle. But in the scenario where Jim Justice is running against Joe Manchin, I find it very, very likely in a state that voted for Trump by 38 points in 2020, that is a consistent Republican state where Joe Manchin has been basically the only outlier for an extended period of time, I would expect Jim Justice to be able to pick up the Senate seat. And this is critical for Senate Republicans because if they retain every other state in a very favorable Senate map, that's 50-50. And it completely would depend on who wins the presidential race if this is the only seat they pick up. So ultimately, this seems like it is a very uphill battle for Democrats and a race that Republicans should not underestimate. Joe Manchin has proven that he can win in West Virginia. However, I do see this as potentially the best opportunity that the Republicans have had in plenty of election cycles to win this seat back and complete the trifecta of governor and both senators in the state. So thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think. Do you think that Jim Justice will win the nomination, or do you think that Alex Mooney will win the nomination? As always, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next video.